Hello and welcome to a brand new Arseblog Arsecast right here on arseblog.com. How are you? Hope you're well. Thank you very much indeed, as always, for being here. Going to absolutely fly through this intro because, well, it's midday on a Friday and that's late for the Arsecast. Of course, that's a consequence of the Europa League group stage games, which take place on a Thursday, making it difficult to record afterwards, and therefore we're recording on a Friday, delaying the podcast, getting into your ears, etc., etc. It's kind of cyclical, but we're back to normal from now, bar, the giant 6-week gap in the middle of the season when there won't be any Arsenal, but we'll do our best to cover for that and make interesting podcasts for you during that period, but they will be whatever they're about on time on a Friday morning. So there we go. As I said, I don't want to delay too much. I want to get this out and into your ears as quickly as I can, but we did finish top of our Europa League group. I don't think the games or the performances are going to go down in history as the most memorable, but in terms of job done, job's done. And you can't really argue with that. We can talk about certain aspects of it, though, and analyse a few bits and pieces from last night's game against FC Zurich and the group stage as a whole. And with me to do that from goal.com, it's Charles Watts. Hi, Charles.
Hello, Andrew, mate. I'm very good. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. You've, let the nerves settle down a little bit after all the thrills and spills of the final group game in the Europa League.
Yeah. I'm not sure thrills is the right word, but it was certainly a lot more stressful than it should have been, wasn't it? I don't think any of us wanted to endure those last 15 minutes like we had to.
No, it was one of those games where you're hoping you get 2-3-0 up at halftime. I think Mikel Arteta would have been looking for something like that, so it's comfortable with PSV leading in Norway against Bodo Glimt. I mean, the last period of the game was actually quite stressful in the sense that they never looked really threatening, but they had one ruled out for offside, obviously, and there was some crosses coming in and some strange sort of, I don't know, Thomas Partey's an amazing player on his day. He's just, fantastic. When he runs the show, he runs the show. But there are times, I think, where it gets a little bit panicky, and he can reflect that panic in a way where he gives the ball away a little bit. There was one where he kind of hoofed it about 10 miles up in the air and over the bar for a corner, and he was a guy who was brought on to give Arsenal a bit of control in those final stages, and we couldn't apply that even with him, with Odegaard on the pitch, barely touched the ball. We got there in the end, and we'll come to all that, but certainly, when you look at the overall performance, it was not as comfortable as it should have been against a team that, hasn't had a good record of late.
No, it absolutely wasn't. I mean, the second half subs made absolutely no difference whatsoever, did they? Like you said, Thomas Partey came on with the aim of wrestling some sort of control in that midfield and just did the exact opposite. Thomas Partey, every time I see him come on as a substitute, I rarely see him take control of the game. He's brilliant from the start, but he's not a sort of player. I don't think he's a player who comes on and changes the game when he's a substitute. I think he just takes a while to get up to speed, and I've seen Arteta bring him on a lot of times to try and get control of the midfield, and very rarely does it. And Bukayo had no impact. Martin Odegaard had no impact, like you said, and it was all just very There were serious Olympiacos flashbacks going on during that game last night. I mean, when they got the set piece right at the end, the last minute, I sat there next to Mark Mann-Bryans, who's the PA reporter for Arsenal, and who was just, he knows my allegiance as a fan to Arsenal, and he was winding me up the whole way in the last 15 minutes of that game, prodding me every time they got forward. And when they got that set piece, I just looked at him, I was like, here we go, Barcelona incoming. It just felt like they were going to score. I mean... Yeah, it was far too tense. They didn't play well. The first half they played well. They should have been out of sight. And we've said this a few times with Arsenal this season of late, but they didn't do it. And then the second half, they just couldn't go on and put them to the sword. And when you do that, no matter who you're playing against, what level of team they are, it's going to get nervy. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. I mean, that free kick against Gabriel in the final couple of minutes, where he was booked as well for what was on replay. When you see the replay, he was just stronger than the guy, got up, won his header, and the referee has given him a yellow card and a free kick, and you're thinking, okay, this is going to go in. Like you say, I mean, it's not that we would have been out of the tournament, but you would have had to play those extra 2 games against a potential difficult opposition. But, like you say, I think Arsenal did play reasonably well in the first half. There were 7 changes from the team that beat Nottingham Forest, so a fair amount of rotation from Mikel Arteta. I know he can't rotate as much as everybody would like at this moment in time because the squad is, it's just not big enough to do that. So he starts Ben White, he starts Gabriel, Ramsdale's in goal because Turner's injured, Gabriel Jesus is starting up front. I think probably as much to try and get him back on the score sheet, even though we all know he's just saving his goals for Chelsea on Sunday. But there were chances. Nketiah made the keeper make a couple of saves. There was one from a header that was very good. Fabio Vieira maybe should have scored. He went the other way across goal, maybe should have gone into the bottom corner. So there were, moments and opportunities for Arsenal to make this game safer in the first half.
Yeah, absolutely were. I thought Vieira's finishing was pretty poor on the night. I thought he could easily have walked away with a couple of goals. Weird performance, I thought, from Fabio Vieira last night. I didn't think he was great at all, but he almost looked the most threatening. He seems to be a player who just pops up. He gets in good positions, doesn't he? He drifts into, finds some space in the box, and he always gets opportunities. And he could have easily walked away with a couple of goals last night. And he could say that about him in the last couple of performances when he hasn't been great, I don't think, but he's still been kind of looked like the most likely player to score, and I think that's actually a positive about him because he's not. He started the group stages really well, and I thought he's played pretty poorly in the last 4 games. But even so, he still finds the right position. I think that's kind of a positive from him in a way, because I still think we're going to see a lot from him as the season progresses, and maybe next season as well. So yeah, there were chances. They weren't clear. Gabriel Jesus had that massive chance at the beginning of the second half, which the keeper somehow sort of saved with the back of his shoulder. I think when you get to the replay from behind, it kind of sums up the way things are going for Jesus in front of goal at the moment. And yeah, it was a weird night. I mean, I saw Tim Stillman tweet after the game, which I thought was really spot on. He kind of listed the amount of Europa League group stages games he could remember since we qualified for the tournament, and he said there's about 4 or 5 of them, and he's right. You just don't remember these games at the end of the day. It's just a case of getting through, and then the games that matter come in the knockout stages. So I don't think anyone's going to lose much sleep with the performance. I asked Mikel afterwards in the press conference, and like that was far more tense than it should have been, wasn't it? And he basically said, yeah, we didn't play great, but we found a way to win. We dug in, we got the win, we topped the group. End of, move on. And I think he's right at the end of the day. No one's going to remember this game at the end of the season, are they? They're just going to remember the fact that Arsenal won again and topped the group. Yeah,
I mean, that's true. But, when we're all sitting around looking for things to talk about and to analyse and everything else when it comes to football, it is one of those situations where, throughout the season, Arsenal have been really good. For the most part, Arsenal played really well. But there have been some struggles in this, and it's interesting, I think, to try and assess the group stage as a whole, because when you look at it you step back objectively, Arsenal top the group, win the group, go into the knockout stages, absolutely 100% job done. Was it 5 wins, 1 defeat against PSV? Wasn't a great night. It was a bit of an off night, but I do think it's interesting to think about what we expect from some of the players who are given an opportunity in these Europa League games. Last season, without Europe, I'm with you and Tim, and I think many people listening to this, like the group stage games, they do not live long in the memory at all. But I think we noticed their absence last season, didn't we? When we had all these gaps between games, or periods where I had like 9 days between games because we'd play on a Saturday and then it was Monday Night Football the next week, and you've got 9 days to sit around and twiddle your thumbs and there's nothing going on. And the benefits to the squad as a whole mean, when you've got these games, players are getting playing time, whether they're playing particularly well or not playing particularly well. At least they're fresh, they've got minutes, they feel involved. So we all know the benefits of that to players. But then I think there are certain individuals that we're looking at in these group stages and saying, right, how hard are they going to push? How hard are they going to make life for the manager when it comes to his team selections? And there's a few players, I think, that, stand out a little bit in terms of that. So we might maybe go through them. Fabio Vieira, I think it's a little bit too early in his Arsenal career to start making definitive judgments or anything like that. Eddie Nketiah, 2 goals from the 6 games. I mean, he's had chances. There were some saves. But I was expecting a little bit more when you looked at the group. I was expecting a little bit more in terms of a goal return, and I think he would be the first to say as well that he would have wanted more from these games. So how do you assess his performances in these group games, bearing in mind, of course, that last night he started on the left-hand side, which I really don't think is his best position.
Yeah, and he did that in 2 of the games, I think. I'm pretty sure, because Jesus definitely started one of the other games, didn't he? Was it PSV at home? I think he started, and then Nketiah was shifted over to left. And I'm with you, I hate Eddie over there. I mean, Eddie's such a penalty box striker, and chucking him over on the left wing, I just don't think does him any favours whatsoever. So I think that has to be taken into account when you look at his overall group stage. And he started well, didn't he? Scored a couple of goals, like you said, and then, he definitely struggled, but it depends how you judge it, doesn't it? If you're judging it purely on goals, 2 out of 6 isn't great for him. But then he easily could have scored yesterday. Keeper makes a good save. PSV away in the second half, he easily could have scored again. The keeper makes a good save with that left foot shot he had at point blank range. Had those gone in, and I know it's all hypothetical because had they gone in, but if they had Sonny sitting there with 4 goals from 6 games, and it looks an awful lot brighter. And I think he'll probably be a little bit disappointed. He would have looked at that group stage and thought, this is an opportunity for me to to get sort of 4 or 5 goals, especially the way he started it. And it hasn't quite happened. But I do think him playing out on the left did have effect, because he's just not a left winger, is he, at all? I'd rather Gabriel Jesus play on the left and Nketiah play as a central striker if Mikel's going to play both of them, because I think both of those players would be more effectual in those positions. So yeah, he'll definitely, I think, be disappointed, a little bit disappointed this morning. Looking back on the group stages, he would have seen it as a big opportunity to kind of stake a claim for more game time, especially at the moment with Jesus struggling for goals in the Premier League, and he hasn't really taken it. But I do think there are a little bit of mitigating circumstances from that. So yeah, I think that's how you how I assess Eddie's group stage anyway. Yeah,
I was looking at him last night, and just something that struck me was quite often he was coming deep to take the ball on the run, and the first touch that I think has improved actually over the last 12, 18 months or so, certainly over the last 6 or 8 months anyway, since he's been regular in the team, was way off last night. Like, the first touch was just not good enough to sort of get him into the positions that he wanted to get into when he did take the ball, so it could be just a bit of an off night. But yeah, I tend to agree that, like, if you are going to play Eddie and Jesus together, then Eddie down the middle makes a lot more sense. But I think Arteta explained it last week, didn't he, in one of the press conferences, that if you're playing, playing somebody out of position, but you're playing Eddie out of position, so it's, like for like almost, isn't it?
I didn't really buy Arteta's answer on that one. I thought, who's a better player, Gabriel Jesus or Eddie Nketiah? It's Gabriel Jesus. So who's going to be better playing out of position out of those 2 players? Is Gabriel Jesus. So I didn't really buy the whole, if we do that, we move 2 players out of position rather than just one. So yeah, I didn't really get that argument, to be honest. And we've seen Gabriel Jesus play out wide before for Man City and play very, very well for them. It was almost his actual position for Man City by the end of his time there, wasn't it? So yeah, I'm a little bit surprised, but I do think as well, like you said earlier on, that I think a lot of the reason behind Gabriel Jesus starting a couple of these games has been trying to get him to break this little goal drought. The fact he played 90 minutes even at the weekend when Arsenal were 5-0 up was, again, a clear sign for me that Arteta's just desperate for him. As much as he says he's not, I think he's clearly desperate for him to score a goal and just get that sort of monkey off his back, ease the tension a little bit, and let him play more freely in front of goal, because he's definitely snatching at things now. He's missing chances that he would have scored at the start of the season, and because of this run. So I think Arteta knows it's good for everyone if he does score pretty quickly, and he's given him enough opportunities recently. Yeah.
Like I said, it'll happen on Sunday. Don't worry about it. Albert Sambi Lokonga played in a different position than he's played most of the season. I think it's fair to say that he's found it kind of hard going in that sort of 6, that Thomas Partey role that he's been asked to play in the Europa League. Yesterday he played in a position where he played in pre-season. People talked about him doing pretty well there. He's obviously had a bit to say for himself recently as well, and Arteta said, you've got to go out there and prove it. You've got to show what you can do on the pitch. I think last night, like much of the group stage in a way, the game sort of passed him by. I was looking at the touches in the first half hour. I think he had fewer touches than any other player. And when you're a winger, maybe you can understand that. If you're a centre forward not getting any service, you can understand that. But when you're playing as a central midfielder at home for Arsenal, I found that kind of strange. I don't know where he was at times. He's one, I think, where there's a conversation to be had about what's best for him and what's best for the team at some point, because this isn't his first season. This is his second season. He's had plenty of time to learn on the training ground, to know what's expected of him. So when we talk about Eddie maybe not producing as much as we would have liked in terms of goals, I don't think Sambi has really taken the opportunity to take a step forward in this season's Europa League games thus far anyway.
No, I agree. I think there's definitely question marks over exactly what Sambi's got in his locker. I think at the moment, is he a 6? Is he an 8? If he's an 8, is he, has he got the qualities to really affect the game in and around the penalty areas? I thought yesterday, I think he almost looked a bit confused, because I agree, I watched him quite closely in the first half to see exactly what sort of positions he was taking up, and he was almost dropping out. He was very deep still. He wasn't really playing as an 8, and I don't know if he was a little bit confused about the position. He's kind of just become accustomed to playing very, very deep, but he wasn't in and around the edge of the penalty area looking to make things happen, making runs into the box, any of that. He didn't appear to be a player playing in a number 8 type role, and whether that's just going to take a bit of getting used to for him, I don't know. But I didn't actually think he did that badly as a 6 at the start of the tournament, at the start of the competition. There was a couple of games, but it's what do you want from your 6 really? Is it ability just to get on the ball and pass it and move it pretty swiftly? I thought he does that. He did that okay. I mean, he's not Thomas Partey. There's no doubt about it. It's quite a big drop off from Partey to Sambi, but I don't think anyone's surprised by that. You're talking about a top quality Champions League player in Thomas Partey, and you're talking about a very young player who's come from Belgium in Sambi. And it took Thomas Partey 6 months to get used to that position when Mikel made that shift. It's a really difficult position to play, and when it's taken someone as good as Thomas Partey that long to really adjust to it, it's no surprise to see Sambi struggle a little bit. But I do agree. I think there's definitely question marks over him, exactly what he is. What does he do? If he's going to be a 6, does he have the personality to really take control of that position, win the ball back, and move it forward like Thomas Partey does when Partey plays well? And if he's going to be a number 8, what is he going to do in and around that penalty area to really affect the game and either score, or can he play a key pass? And there's definitely question marks over that. And he's one of those players you look at and think in the summer, because he's not going to go in January by any means, but you do wonder in the summer when Arsenal look into it, how they're going to improve their squad, especially if they are in the Champions League. They'd be looking at that and thinking, what do we do here? Do we send him out on loan, give him a season playing somewhere to really step up, play every single game, and then assess him after that, and do we bring in someone to replace him? And I think ultimately, the way things are going at the moment, it kind of feels like they will need to, because I'm just not sure he has shown in the 18 months yet that he has got the quality to really step up and be a Champions League player.
I think your use of the word personality is quite interesting there, because clearly he's got talent. He can use the ball pretty well. I feel like it's off the ball, or when we're not in possession, where he really struggles, or he finds certain aspects of the game a bit more challenging. Because like I said, in the first half, he was nowhere. I thought he was better in the first half of the second half. He got involved a little bit, but in that final 20-25 minutes, when your back's to the wall, when you're under a bit of pressure, you need players to have a bit of presence, to have a bit of personality, to be a bit more aggressive. I think last week or the week before, because you were probably in the press conference where Arteta spoke about a lack of aggression. Could have been after the PSV game, actually. He's talking about a lack of aggression. And I think that really applies to Sambi, and it's not as if he's a tiny little guy. He's a good athlete. He's got good physique. He could be there, but too many balls bounce around him, if you know what I mean, in midfield where we need to attack them, and too many balls just sort of bounce there, and then there's a problem. I think we saw it with one of the PSV goals last week as well. So it is it is one of those where you're looking, okay, in this group stage, it's a chance to make the manager sit up and take notice and to give him a decision to make. And I don't really think he's done that either as a 6 or an 8. And again, with the mitigation that he is still young and there's plenty of room for improvement, etc., etc. But, you know, this is us just overanalyzing the group stages a bit.
I don't think he's done himself any favours, put it that way, with the group stage. I think you kind of look at winners and losers from this group stage, and I'd certainly class Sambi in the sort of losers category at this moment. I don't think he's put his hand up and sent Mikel a message by any means when it comes to the Premier League. And the more I look at him at the moment, the more I feel like a loan spell away might be the best for him and for Arsenal to look to replace. But we'll see. That's a job for the summer.
Kieran Tierney is somebody who's had a difficult season by his own admission. For the first time in his career, he's not the first choice at the football club he's at. I don't know if I go so far as to say that he is third choice. I think that's a little bit harsh. I think there's been some tactical tweaks of late, and he's maybe paid the price a little bit for that. But last night, I thought he was probably Arsenal's best player. And on a night when we needed somebody to step up and do something decisive to win a game, he was that guy. You know, it's clear he's desperate to play. He wants to play every game. He said afterwards he wants to play every single minute. So when you do get a chance in a game like this, you could consider it almost a dead rubber in Europe, maybe. But, you know, he was there. He was aggressive. He was trying to make things happen. He had the shirt ripped off his back and somehow didn't get a free kick for it, which is unbelievable. Some of the refereeing decisions last night were just beyond belief. I couldn't quite make any sense of why the referee did what he did in certain situations, but I guess that's not really a discussion we need to have. But Tierney was there and he scored a goal, very good goal, great technique to make sure it got into the bottom corner. And, you know, depending on what happens with Tomiyasu and what the injury situation is with him, he could well be in the team on Sunday against Chelsea.
Yeah, I think he definitely starts against Chelsea. I can't imagine there's any way that Tomiyasu is going to be... I mean, I don't think we'll see Tomiyasu now until after the World Cup, but that's just a hunch. That's not based on any sort of info that I've got. I thought he played well. I mean, he was my man of the match. I think he was the only player I gave a 7 to in my player ratings after the game. And he took his goal really, really well. And I just thought it was a threat, especially in the first half. He was Arsenal's biggest threat getting down that left-hand side. And I am absolutely on the Tierney side of the argument when it comes to Tierney Tomiyasu at left back. I thought it was a tactical masterstroke by Arteta against Liverpool, and it worked perfectly. But I haven't agreed with it continuing for the other games, especially the likes of Nottingham Forest at home, Southampton away.
Do you not think it worked very well against Forest? I thought Tomiyasu was very good against Nottingham Forest.
He played well, absolutely. I thought he played well, but I just don't really get why you need to be... why you have to continue the whole more inverted left-back type thing when you've got a player as good as Kieran Tierney there. I think it's really harsh on Kieran Tierney to have a right-back moved ahead of you when you've lost your place in the team to Zinchenko as it is, and then suddenly for Zinchenko to get injured and you find yourself behind a right-back being moved over to left-back. And I thought it's been harsh on Tierney, who I really like. And I like the old-fashioned left-back getting down on the wing, bombing on the overlap. And he did it really well yesterday. Vieira should have scored from Tierney getting down, doing exactly that and cutting the ball back. And, you know, I think there's absolutely a place for Kieran Tierney in this team. If Zinchenko's fit, I'd probably play Zinchenko. But when Zinchenko's not fit, for me, Kieran Tierney should be starting at left-back. And that's nothing against Tomiyasu, who I really like. And I think he's an excellent defender and he's done very, very well there. But I thought... I was really happy for Tierney yesterday, and I think there was a lot of pent-up frustration. He always loves an angry celebration, doesn't he? Yeah. I thought there was definitely a lot of pent-up frustration in that celebration yesterday. He's had a difficult few months, and it must have been really tough for him. I remember the interview he gave after the Liverpool game. He did the media at London Colney, and it was a really good interview. And he spoke about what it felt like when he heard Tomiyasu. You know, he said Mikel would pull me in. He explained it to me. He said it was purely tactical, and I thought he spoke really well. But the fact then it's continued in all the other games, it kind of almost made it feel like, well, it's not really tactical if it's happening all the time. It's almost the norm. And so that must have been really difficult for him, because I'm sure he would have been expecting to come back into the side after the Liverpool game. But you know with Tierney what you're going to get. He's such a professional player. You know, he's got such a brilliant attitude. And, he steps up when needed, and he certainly did that last night in a game when Arsenal didn't perform very well. He was the one who made the difference, and yeah, I think I'd be very surprised if he doesn't start at Chelsea at the weekend.
Yeah, it's a shame for Tommy when he went off, and you could see the way that he was going. I don't know if you were able to see the TV pictures or whatever, but there was like a shit, World Cup in doubt kind of expression on his face, and
there was a few Japanese. There's always Japanese reporters in the press box now because of Tommy, obviously, and they always wait in the mix zone, and they were really worried. You could tell they were worried. They got absolutely no change out of Mikel in his press conference afterwards, which I thought was you could tell they just wanted something about. And Mikel was just like, it's Chelsea on Sunday. That's all I'm bothered about. And which is a great example of how Mikel is just like, I don't give a shit about the World Cup. Arsenal is all I care about. I don't care about everything else. But they were concerned, and I think you saw on Tommy's face. He walked past us in the press box when he was sort of limping around the pitch. And we've seen what with Tomiyasu last season, a couple of these muscular injuries, how long he's been out for. It's been a 6 weeks type thing, and the World Cup is right around the corner, and I fear for him, I have to say.
Yeah, and it's sort of unfortunate, isn't it? Because that felt very much like a prescribed substitution, in terms of Ben White getting to the hour mark, bring on Tomiyasu. So you're trying to manage the minutes. And I think that's what he's trying to do in these games, because we don't have the squad to rotate as much as everyone would like. Giving somebody an hour and then giving somebody else a half an hour in the game is the way that they're managing the minutes. And that's obviously what was happening with Tomiyasu. It wasn't necessarily that we needed Tomiyasu, but they were that was probably down on paper, before the game started. So fingers crossed for him, because that would be a real shame if he were to miss the World Cup.
It would be. I think just going back to Tierney on that, I think that's the one kind of mitigating circumstance I think might be the difference with Tierney is that maybe Mikel has been managing those minutes so carefully and playing one player on the Thursday, one player on the Saturday, starting one, bringing the other one on for half an hour, and had that not been the case, maybe Tierney would have been playing at left back right now, but maybe he's just looked at the situation and thought, you know what, I'm just going to play Tierney in the Europa League now and then give him half an hour in the Premier League, and vice versa with the other ones. So that might be a reason why we've seen Tierney on the bench and Tomiyasu starting in the Premier League. Yeah,
I think that there's something to that. And it says something as well about, if we worry about not having as much depth as we would like, the fact that we... nominal third choice Kieran Tierney says a lot about your options at left back, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Yeah, they've got a strong squad in certain areas. There's just one or two, isn't there, where you're a little bit concerned. But certainly at fullback at the moment, I think Arsenal are very, very blessed with the options that they've got.
The avoidance of that knockout round is huge as well, though, isn't it? Because I know it's sort of like a what's the word I want to use here? I can't remember what it is, but the idea of it was there and people were sort of half worried about it. But when you look at some of the teams that are in there, Ajax, Barcelona, Juventus, Monaco, Manchester United, Sevilla, Roma, I presume there was something that would prevent the English teams being drawn against each other in that knockout round, but still some heavyweight opposition in there, even if some of those clubs aren't quite what we would expect from them in terms of strength and quality at this moment in time. You prefer not to be playing them at that point anyway of the competition.
Absolutely. I mean, you can put this to bed now till March, which is, it's a great position for how crazy the fixture schedule is going to be after the World Cup. To be able to just not worry about the Europa League till March is fantastic now. And, Mikel Arteta was absolutely desperate for that. I was looking at it yesterday. The rules, it's a bit bizarre. It's like, even though you've won the group now, Arsenal are going to have to play basically a Champions League team in the last 16, which I was surprised. I thought you'd almost get a little bit of protection from that because you're a group winner. But the way the rules are is that they can't play United in a round of 16 if United win their playoff game.
Right.
And you can't play a group winner from the Europa League. So it's either a Champions League team or a team that finished second in the Europa League. And you'd imagine that the Champions League team are going to win all the playoffs against the teams who finished second. So Arsenal virtually guaranteed a Champions League team in the round of 16. And given two of the Spanish sides won their leagues, that the chances of getting Barcelona in that round was quite, it's about 1 in 4, I think.
Right. Well, we owe them one at this point. We
do owe them one at the moment, and it's not really the Barcelona team that we've been used to playing as well. So maybe we'll actually we'll actually get one over them this time. But yeah, I mean, it's great. It's great to not worry about it. It would have been awful to go back in February and have to squeeze those 2 games in. So every sort of rest you can get in the second half of the season is going to be vital. So yeah, it's really, really important.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, there is the Europa League group stage done and dusted. We finished top, and then, like you say, we can start worrying about it next year after the break, after the World Cup, and all the rest of it. A few other little bits and pieces this week. Gabriel Martinelli was talking about his future. He says, I just need to get a pen. Is there a pen shortage at Highbury House? What's going on there? Is everything like one of those PDFs that nobody can figure out how to put their signature on? It does sound a bit like a formality, doesn't it? That this is, given how keen he is to sign a new contract, it does feel pretty much like a formality that this one gets done.
I bet his agent, though, was a bit annoyed with him when he saw those comments. I just bet he was just like, Gabby, don't go off script here.
Yeah.
Calm it down when you're talking publicly. And good old James Benge kind of put that pen word line into Gabby's mouth as well. And he bit. But yeah, it was... every time we spoke to him a few weeks ago after, I can't remember what game it was in the mix zone, and he kind of said the exact same thing. I want to stay, and he clearly does. Well, I think he does. And it's just a case of getting a deal done. But it's as much as it is a case of, I just want to get a pen. It all comes down to money at the end of the day. He may well want to stay, but there'll clearly be a number in his mind, or certainly his agent's mind, that Arsenal need to meet. And so as much as the desire is there to stay, well, everyone's going to have to come to an agreement over exactly how much money they're getting paid. And with Gabby, it's not so stressful because he's still got 18 months left, and Arsenal do have a 2-year option on him. So, they've got plenty of time with Gabby, but you don't really want to be taking up that option because that would just be continued on the same terms. You're just going to piss everyone off if you do that, because the players need to be rewarded, and Arsenal understand that. Arteta understands that. Edu understands that. It's a case of rewarding them for their stature in the team now and the talent. So you don't want to be renewing. So you don't want to be extending on current terms. You want to be giving them a fresh deal. And I think. I mean, Mikel said as well on that same day when we spoke to Gabby at London Colney, Mikel said also that he felt that Arsenal were in a good place with those 3. Yeah. And he's always been very positive about it. And you just got to take that on at sort of face value, I think, and see how it goes. They're tricky negotiations. They're 3 very talented young players who are going to have every single club in Europe banging on their agent's door constantly. And so Arsenal know that. So they're not going to be easy ones to do, but I think certainly the noises that come out of Arsenal when you talk to the people around there is that they are fairly confident that they'll get them done. I think Saliba's the one for me that is the biggest concern right now, and I'm not overly concerned about it, but I just think Saliba, obviously the time frame of Saliba's is the most worrying out of all 3 of them, and also there's still that thing of the relationship. How strained did the relationship get? How much do you have to still repair that because of what's happened in the last couple of years? Certainly with the agent as well. So I think he's the one that I'm more concerned about, but I'm not overly concerned.
The thing about it, it is quite an interesting one to consider, from an Arsenal perspective, because over the last couple of years they have absolutely slashed the wage bill, right? They've cut out the biggest earners, the guys who are making huge money are gone. And that has an impact on the wage bill. But now you're developing a team and you've got players in there who are potential superstars. I know there's a tendency for hyperbole when you talk about players and their potential, and this guy's world class and that guy's world class. But, they've got Martinelli, who's taken a real step forward this season. Saliba's come in and just added so much. Saka, as we know, just consistently fantastic. 21 years of age, 21, 22 years of age, right? Where you have to acknowledge their stature in the game when you're talking about a new contract. It's not just you're an Arsenal boy, Bukayo, you sign here, it'll be all good. You have to recognize their earning potential elsewhere as well and factor that into the contract offers that you make. And as much as you might want to manage your wage bill and everything else, you have to operate within the realms of reality, where other clubs can come along and say, well, if Arsenal are only going to pay you that, we'll give you this. And I'm not saying that they will just go, well, I'll go here because it's more money. But you have to sort of benchmark their talent against what they might be earning at some of the bigger clubs, as difficult as that might be. And if Arsenal are a team that is challenging for the Premier League, maybe the stature in the last couple of years has taken a bit of a hit, but if we're going back on the trajectory towards the top of the table, if you're seen as a top of the table club or a title challenger, that's also part of the negotiation when agents come to the table and say, well, look, my player is helping you achieve X, Y, and Z. They should be rewarded for that. So it's not as cut and dried as people might like.
No, absolutely. Like you said at the beginning, they are three potential superstars of the game. Those three players specifically, I mean, they've got everything needed to be absolute, the very top of the game. Saliba just looks like, I know everyone keeps saying Rolls Royce defender, but he does. He just looks that good. He looks like he could be an absolute, a Varane type player for 10 years at a top club. But Bukayo Saka's just, his numbers are unreal, what he's done in his age. And Martinelli looks like a player who you could absolutely envisage wearing a Real Madrid shirt and bombing down that wing, but it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you've got to keep those players if you want to build this team, and you've got them in your club. It's so essential you keep them and continue to build. But every single club in Europe is going to be looking at those players, and so, like you said, you have to reward them. You have to pay them what they can get elsewhere and what they will be being offered elsewhere. And emotional ties can only last so long. I asked Gabby about it at London Colney when we were talking about his contracts, and I was like, do you feel this emotional attachment to Arsenal? Because when others rejected you, they were the ones that brought you to Europe and gave you the chance. Is that why you're so desperate to stay, because of this emotional tie? And he said yes, but you can only rely on that for so long. The same with Bukayo Saka. You can only play the Hale End card for so long, because ultimately the desire to be successful and to win and to make the most out of his potential overtakes the emotional tie to a football club. Look at Wayne Rooney with Everton. Look at, Jack Grealish from Manchester City.
Look at Cesc Fabregas. Look at Robin Van Persie, where we've had these players who are just unbelievable talents, but they want to achieve things in the game. Yeah. And as connected as they are to Arsenal, or as connected as they were to Arsenal, I know some people don't want to believe that these guys really loved it at Arsenal, but they did. But in order to achieve success and what they wanted from the game, they left. And that's what will happen if you are, purely trading on that emotional attachment. Yeah,
you have to one, you have to pay them what they're worth, but two, you've got to show them that you're trying to match their ambitions and that you believe you can. Now, Arsenal are on a good path to do that, I think, under Mikel Arteta, and I think the players are all buying into it. And I have no reason to think that any of them are thinking at the moment, oh, we could go elsewhere right now and have a better chance of being successful. So I think Arsenal are in a good position with all three of them, like Mikel Arteta says, but it's not, like you said, it is not cut and dry by any means. They are difficult negotiations, and they're not ones that you can just click your fingers and be done with. So I'm not surprised they're still going on. I would have liked to have got some positive news on at least one of them before the World Cup. It hasn't happened. We've obviously had Gabriel Magalhaes one done, which is good. And there's probably others that are going to be rumbling on in the background now as well. I mean, Aaron Ramsdale, players like that, who was obviously brought in as the number 2 keeper initially and is now an England international and first choice. You've got to reward these players. So they've done a lot of good work in slashing the wage bill in the last few years, and it's been really, really important, because now you've got to this level where it feels like you've got space to be able to reward the players that you now have and take them up to the pay bracket that they deserve to be. So I don't think the wage bill is going to stay as it is for much longer.
No, I don't think it is, and it might well increase, because there's talk of January and talk of players coming in January, and some interesting quotes from Arteta in the week. You acknowledge the difficulties of the January transfer window, as we all know, but he said, with the position that we're in right now, it demands another level of player, and that player has to be available. So it's kind of like, we know we need top talent, but it's got to be available. And who's available in January, it's always a little more difficult. He said, we'll look at everything and see what we can do. I mean, what did you read into that? Like, he talked about players who come in straight away. There isn't an adaptation process if you come in January. You know, if you're a summer signing, you get pre-season, you get to settle in, meet everyone, learn everything about the club or what have you. But if you come in January, there's sort of like an onus on you to start producing straight away. So when Arsenal are looking at this January window, they're looking at quite a specific caliber of player, aren't they? In that their availability is one thing, but their ability then to come in and start games and contribute in the Premier League and at the business end of the Europa League, hopefully, and, you know, big important games is going to be a factor in their planning for that window.
Yeah, I think it will be. I mean, it's not the first time he said it. He said it throughout last summer's window as well. That, and managers, you always do hear say that when they talk about signing players. I remember back to George Graham, wasn't it? When we was refusing to sign anyone towards the end, it was always, I can't sign anyone to improve the squad, even though he had a squad full of players like Mark Flats and things like that. I think they will. I think they will do something in January. I'll be surprised if they don't. I think this January window is going to be really interesting because it's a little bit different. You've got the break for the World Cup. You've got almost a pre-season ahead of the January window to really plan when you're not playing week in, week out, and you can really sort of plan. Arteta can spend a lot of time with Edu over in Dubai when they're away before they come back for the restart. And it feels like you've got a little bit more planning time for this January. And the fact that Arsenal are in the position they are in makes it even more interesting because they would be mad if, in my opinion, speaking not just as a fan, but as just a journalist, as a football person, you'd be mad not to really try and
capitalise on this
advantage that you've given yourself by this start to the season, because you've got one hell of an opportunity, not so much to win the title. I don't think any of us want to say that at the moment, but you know, you've got a real chance of doing what you set out to achieve at the start of the season, which is getting top four. And you've got to push that advantage home now. And I think so January, they've got to go out and at least bring in a couple of players, I think, in January. And they need to be players, like you said, who can come in and hit the ground running. You don't really want to be bringing in another kid who you have to take time. Like, look at Fabio Vieira, how long it's taken him to settle in. And that's not the sort of player I think you're looking at in January to come in and make a difference. You're looking at a Zinchenko, Jesus type signing in January, aren't you, to really come in and make a difference. And whether Arsenal can push the boat out and they can spend that sort of money, whether they can convince the Cronkies to do it, we'll have to wait and see. But if you're the Cronkies and you're sitting there and you're desperate to get back in the Champions League and you're looking at the league table, you're looking at the way the team's playing, you're looking at the progress that Arteta has made, if you're ever going to push the boat out in January, it's going to be this January, isn't it? So I think it's going to be an intriguing January transfer window. Yeah,
I think it will, because you know what's interesting so far is that the players that we have been linked with, like Danilo, like the guy at Shakhtar Donetsk, Mudryk, they are quite young. Those players are young. They're not the established 24, 25 like Zinchenko and Jesus, and they do fit with the way the club is recruited of late. You know, you're going to bring in young, hungry, talented players and watch them grow, etc., etc. But then it's like trying to decide whether or not these guys can give you enough in that second half of the season. You know, they might be brilliant summer signings, but do you have to think twice in January?
Yeah, I think certainly. I think Mudryk, I think he would make a difference. Personally, I think he's such a good player. I really do. And he's obviously, you know, he's got Champions League experience. He's not a kid coming in, say a Danilo coming in from South America, suddenly being thrust into London in the middle of January and told, go on, make us get Champions League football. I mean, that's just being incredibly harsh on the kid to do that. But I think Mudryk, at least he is experienced at top level European football and has shown this season he can do it in the Champions League. And I think he would come in and make a difference for me. I'm not saying that he'll be the player Arsenal sign. I think it's going to be very hard to sign him because Shakhtar are in a very strong position and they're going to want a lot of money for him. And they're going to have quite a few clubs, I imagine, circling. So, but he would be, for me, he'd be a really exciting signing. And I think that's the area that Arsenal have to improve in January. I think you've got to bring in another wide player. I think it'd be mad if they don't. I think that area and the central midfield, I think if you can get two top quality players in that position, then I just really think Arsenal would be nailed on for a top four spot if you can manage to do that. And you know, you've got to give Saka a break. And I think it's pretty clear that Marquinhos isn't going to be considered to be able to do that. And I think he'll go out on loan in January. I love the whole Reece Nelson story at the weekend against Nottingham Forest, but ultimately I'm really not sure Reece Nelson's going to be the man to cover Bukayo Saka for the second half of the season. I think you've got to, if you're Edu now and you're sitting in the office and you've got a list of targets on your wall, which he has, I think a right winger is going to be very much at the very top of that list.
There was, just very finally, there was sort of a little bit of a heart in mouth moment, wasn't there, in the Forest game when Saka went off, and you wrote about it during the week and I wrote about it during the week, the lack of protection that Bukayo Saka gets in terms of some of the challenges, the consistency of those challenges, the way that it feels systematic now, the way that players play against him. If they're not doubling up on him, they're going right through the back of him, and he doesn't get the free kicks that he should get. And as I said, 17.
He's only been fouled 17 times this season in the Premier. It's laughable. 17. He's fouled 17 times in one game.
Yeah. He's just not getting what he should get, and I don't really understand why that is. For a bright young English talent to be treated differently from other players who, a defender whispers in their ear and they go down screaming and they get whatever they want. That doesn't seem to apply to Saka. But I think, he was back. He obviously played last night, didn't have a great deal of impact on the game. But, I think if you are Edu, if you are Mikel Arteta, you're sitting there and you're going, okay, we're kind of lucky in a way because the season is taking a break now in a couple of weeks. But if Saka, in a normal season is kicked out of the game for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever it is, you're not in a great position. It does hammer home where you need to strengthen in this squad and how you need to be able to cope with the absence of a very important player, a key player. I know there are certain players in teams who are kind of a step above where you can't just have a like-for-like replacement, but you've got to have a credible replacement. And like you, I sort of share concerns about the options that we have right now at this moment in time. So it might be, I'm not going to say a wake-up call for them, but just a little reminder that there is business to be done.
Yeah, no, I think there is. I absolutely think there is. I think they knew it as well, because in the summer window, had there not been that late drama over central midfielders right at the end of the window, I think Arsenal would have spent the last few days trying to get a winger over the line, and then they had to change. They had to change what they were looking at because of what had happened in defensive midfield. So they are very aware of it, and it's just a case of who's out there. And in January, we know how difficult it's going to be. And like Arteta spoke about when he was looking at it, it's not an easy window to get players out of clubs, but it's not impossible. So it's just a case of how much Arsenal really want to push the boat out to try and get these deals done. I mean, you look at, I spoke about Modric, he's more of a left winger. So he's not, if he came in, he wouldn't be a like-for-like Saka replacement, really, when I've seen him at Shakhtar. And I'm no expert on him, but when I've seen him at Shakhtar, he tends to be off the left most of the time. So maybe he wouldn't, he's not a like-for-like replacement for Bukayo. So we'll have to wait and see. But it's going to come round very, very quickly. It's not far away. I'm dreading it as much as I'm looking forward to it, to be honest, because I can't stand the transfer window. But yeah, bring it on.
All right. We'll see what happens. January's still a way away. We've got a lot to do between now and then. For now, though, we'll leave it there. Charles, as ever, thanks very much.
Thanks, mate. Speak to you soon.
Thank you very much indeed to Charles. You can find him on Twitter. He is at Charles_Watts, at Charles_Watts. And of course, he writes about Arsenal for Goal.com. Right, gonna leave it there. Just to let you know, there is not going to be an end bit at the end of this particular podcast because, well, time is pressing. I need to get this out. I have loads of other stuff to do today. So my hand is rather forced in that regard. For more listening, we will have a Chelsea preview podcast for you over on Patreon tomorrow, patreon.com/Arseblog. We'll have that out for you before lunchtime on Saturday. I think myself and Lewis Ambrose will look ahead to that particular game, a game that James and I will discuss on the Arsecast Extra on Monday. So join us for that, what will hopefully be a goodly morning, and some exciting merchandising news on Monday's Arsecast Extra too, regardless of what happens at Stamford Bridge. But fingers crossed we can give Chelsea what they deserve, continue our good form, and remain at the top of the table going into the final week of the first half the first part of this season, I should say. As ever, thank you very much indeed for being here. Thank you for listening. Thanks for your downloads and your reviews and your support and everything else. Have a great weekend, and we will catch you on the next one. Until then, cheers. Bye-bye.